Joining us from Capitol Hill, Deputy Whip for the House Republican Conference, Congressman Tom Cole of Oklahoma. Congressman, it's great to have you with us this morning. Jump in on this conversation. I know you've been listening. I know you heard what Speaker Boehner said on Face the Nation yesterday. You were less diplomatic, shall we say, when speaking yesterday about Ted Cruz. You said classless, tasteless, and counterproductive. This is a guy that for 25 years has a distinguished record in the House talking about Boehner. I'm certainly not talking about Senator Cruz. What is that dynamic? Is the way you look at it from the inside?
Well, I'm trying to be more diplomatic this morning. At first, I got to tell you what a pleasure it is to be on the same program with my leader, Eric Cantor. What a great member he was, and how much we miss him every day up here. But look, I think, again, Leader Cantor had it exactly right. We have to school people in the realities of divided government in a very polarized atmosphere and a system that our forebears set up. It's full of checks and balances. You know, a lot of people think that John Boehner is not the Speaker of the House. They confuse him with being the Prime Minister. Well, we operate in a body where we don't have all legislative, let alone executive authority, concentrated in a single place. That's what our forefathers meant to do. They were most afraid of concentrated power. And so this system, is meant to be difficult to accomplish things. It's meant to require compromise and give and take. And those people that suggest it doesn't work that way are either people who are being deliberately demagogic or simply haven't been around long enough to understand it. And it does concern me that a lot of them pride themselves as being, defenders of the Constitution. They clearly haven't read it because, again, a lot of the things they suggest just are at odds with the basic principles of our founding documents.
Okay, Michael Steele, any words of wisdom for those still in the House and those recently left in your party?
Run.
John Boehner listened.
Yeah, he did. He did. I want to toss this, I guess, to Mr. Cole or my buddy Eric Cantor, either one. Do you not recognize the frustration that a lot of conservatives around the country who've now found their voices articulated with the Tea Party conservatives in the House because they feel they've been lied to? There have been promises made. You elect us and we'll do these things. They've elected you, and you haven't done those things. So how do you reconcile?
With that.
I know. You may disagree with that, but you have to understand that's what the base of the party is saying now.
That's what they've systematically been told by people that ought to know better. I mean, frankly, we said if you create a majority. Let me finish my point. Those people are just a lot. Well, I'm not going to get into naming names, but there's a whole slew of them. And the reality is, we were elected to lower the budget deficit. By the way, we have. It was $1.4 trillion when this president took office. It's under $430 billion today. We were elected to get tax cuts. By the way, we have. We protected all the Bush tax cuts. Taxes had actually gone up on January 1st of 2013. We cut them dramatically on January 3rd. We were elected to do some entitlement reform. We just did that in the so-called doc fix that helped save, the Medicare and Medicaid fund, or at least extend their life quite a bit. Now, again, that was done in divided government, and that was not done particularly with the cooperation of the president or, for most of the time, the Democratic majority in the Senate. So given the realities of what we've had to work with, we've done a reasonably good job. Again, I agree with Eric very much. A lot of people, say that you ought to be able to write a new agenda. It takes a president of the United States. We didn't win every election. We've won and held the majority, which is pretty extraordinary to hold it through 2012. And my friend Eric Cantor had a lot to do with that, by the way. We didn't win the presidential election in 2012. Barack Obama has gotten over 50% of the vote twice. Nobody since Dwight Eisenhower has done that. So we need to look and understand the changing demographics, the changing political reality, continue to fight, extract the victories where we can. The most important thing we can do is win the 2016 presidential election. If we were to shut down the government now, as some recommend, that would make it much more difficult for whoever our nominee is to actually succeed in the most important task, and that's giving us a new president to lead us in the right direction.
Speaking an awful lot of common sense here, Congressman Cole. You got to be careful up there with that stuff.
It's very dangerous.
It's going to get you in trouble.
Yeah, I hurt my friend Eric. rhetoric a lot.
We talked a little bit about reaction to this. Obviously, Leader Cantor was very surprised to hear about Speaker Boehner's announcement. The 2016 presidential candidates also reacting out on the trail. It divided the party. Senators Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz were among the first White House hopefuls to offer their thoughts at the Values Voter Summit after the news broke on Friday.
Just a few minutes ago, Speaker Boehner announced that he will be resigning. It's not about him or anybody else, and I'm not here today to bash anyone. But the time has come to turn the page. The time has come to turn the page and allow a new generation of leadership in this country.
Yesterday, John Boehner was Speaker of the House. You all come to town and somehow that changes. My only request is, can you come more often?
Well, I'm saddened. I think John was a very, he's a great guy. I was there in the 90s when we actually got things done. Think about it. We changed the welfare system, which had been in place for about 40 years. We balanced the budget, of which I was the chief architect, and we cut taxes. The economy was growing, and we were doing great. And when I left Washington, we had a $5 trillion surplus. And Boehner sat at the leadership table right next to me, and we pushed those things through, and that was some of the most productive time that Republicans or conservatives have had.
I admire John Boehner greatly. He's a great public servant. He left at the apex of his time in service to the country with the Pope speaking in Congress. I think people are going to miss him in the long run because he's a person that is focused on solving problems.
So Congressman Cole, some obviously very contrasting styles and contrasting points of view on the news about Speaker Boehner. I'm curious, we had a reaction around this table. I'm curious what yours was when we saw that crowd whoop into cheers on the news that Speaker Boehner was leaving.
Well, I think they've been, frankly, deliberately and systematically misinformed. And that's sad. I mean, frankly, the senators we were talking about haven't been able to get, for instance, the repeal of Obamacare to the floor in the United States Senate. We've repealed it, what, 50, 60 times in the House? Look, we've been the most functional part of the system. And I don't say this with any disparagement. They're politicians, they're in political campaigns, and they're playing to the crowd. But I think the distinction between the class of your last two speakers and the first two is pretty obvious to anybody that listens. You don't tap dance on somebody's political coffin. And in this case, the speaker chose the moment he was leaving. He would have won this fight easily. Everybody in this body knows it, but he chose to sacrifice himself in order to spare his members from a tough vote. I'm not sure I would have done that, frankly. I wouldn't have, but I admire him for doing it. It says a lot about his character and who he is. And frankly, those that are tormenting him right now, it says a lot about their character and who they are.
Sam Stein.
Well, let me start by saying I'm biased. I want a Jewish speaker, and it turns out Congressman Cantor came this close, and it makes me sad. Now, with that said, one of the things that I noticed in the Boehner interview yesterday that I just can't wrap my head around is this. He said that when it came to the government shutdown in October of 2013, everyone knew it would fail, and so it was silly. But he still went into the shutdown, and I guess I just don't understand. If he knew it would fail, if he knew it was a bad idea, if he knew it would be costly, why didn't he at one point say, you know what, enough, we're not going to do this? Why did he have to go through that process?
Well, in my view, and I talked to him a little bit at the time about this, because frankly, I shared the frustration. I was very much against it, said that publicly. We never had an opportunity to vote on it until 18 days in. I think he thought it would teach some people a lesson. And for a while, it did, frankly. We had some really good discussions after that. But now we have the very same people who led us to disaster in October of 2013 telling us to do precisely the same thing. And if we just do it longer and harder, it will work. That's just nonsense. Government shutdowns never work. They never have. They're always inappropriate tactics. There's actually a Quinnipiac poll out this morning that shows the American people 3-1 against this idea. So we won't do that. We won't do that now, this this week, and frankly, I don't think we'll do it at the end of the so-called continuing resolution in early December. You got to work across the aisle and cross divides when you have divided government, and you have institutions where one party dominates one branch. We have the House. The Democrats count in the Senate. They can control the filibuster, and obviously any deal has to sign, the president has to sign it. So at the end of the day, you have to have some give and take or nothing gets done.
Okay, Eric Cantor, when you listen to the presidential candidates' reactions there and you listen to Ted Cruz, the tone that he's using, the things that he is suggesting, now you've left government and can be more frank, what do you make of it?
I just think that was small. I mean, I agree with Tom Cole. You just don't do that. And it may have seemed politically advantageous at the time to the both of them, but look, it gets back to being honest with the voters. And I think at the end of the day, conservatives believe, as does the other side, that you ought to be honest, and it starts there. Then we diverge in terms of how we believe you affect the proper outcome to increase economic activity, people's standard of living, and the rest. We believe that government
Are you suggesting he's being
plays
dishonest?
less of a role. I believe that the crowds that we saw there were led to believe that certain things could happen, and they can't. I mean, Ted Cruz knows good and well, and he did before in the 2013 shutdown, that was not leading anywhere. But yet, the story is told over and over again. And again, I think John Boehner's acts now and his stepping down gives the Republicans an opportunity in Congress to talk about what can and cannot be done and to finally be honest with constituents and how do we incrementally work towards a conservative outcome while we focus on electing a conservative president.
It's a fascinating conversation about the state of affairs in Washington from a bunch of guys who've been right in the middle of it.
When do you figure Tom Cole's going to resign?
He's in the fight, man.
Listen, I still don't understand how Speaker McCarthy is going to manage.
Right.
This is it's a very difficult situation, and I wish him the best because I want to see Congress work, and I know Eric and Tom feel the same way.
It's not clear what changes right away. Eric Cantor, always great to have you with us. Thank you so much. Congressman Tom Cole, appreciate you being with us as well.
Thank you.